What made you believe you wanted to be blind?
I simply felt there was a need. My body image, the image of who I was, just didn't match who I was in reality.
Gender is the sense of self, of who one is in the world that we live in. And so gender really is not defined by what you look like or what your body looks like. It's who you are inside. Gender dysphoria is the sense that there is some distress or stress related to the fact that how you see yourself is not how the rest of the world sees you. And that can lead to anxiety and depression. So the dysphoria is when your understanding of who you are does not match with what the rest of the world sees. Sometimes people do not feel that they are the same gender as what their sex at birth was.
Okay, and you said this became very strong for you at about 12 or 13?
That's correct.
Okay, so when you were 4, 5, or 6, you were looking around and playing like every other child.
I was.
But was there something when you were 12 or 13 that began to trigger this for you?
I don't think there was anything that specifically triggered it. I think at that point it just started building up.
I didn't even know exactly who trans people were until I was 17 years old. So I never really had the choice of should I be a girl? Is that really who I am? I didn't know it was possible. I didn't know. I just didn't know. What I did know was that I was very interested in hair and makeup and dresses and all the girly stuff. I would follow my mom and my sister around while they did their hair, while they did their makeup. I would beg to come with them when they went dress shopping, just following them around like a lost puppy.
Did you want to be different?
In a way, yes, I wanted to be different.
You started kind of researching to see if there were others that felt this way, right?
Yes, I read an article about a man who put his legs on dry ice. And in the article, it talked about body integrity identity disorder. And at that point, I realized that I wasn't alone.
In awe of all this stuff. I think the breaking point almost of when I really needed to get down to business and figure out what what was wrong. It was probably a year ago. I'm sure you guys know who Ariana Grande is, and I was a huge Ariana Grande fan at this time. So I was on Tumblr scrolling through all my stuff, scroll. I saw a gif of Ariana Grande dancing in her heels, showing off her femininity, just rocking out, I felt so jealous and so upset that I couldn't do the same, that I realized that something's wrong. Something's not right. So I started researching and trying to figure out if other people are feeling the same way that I felt.
You were blind simming or artificially obstructing your view, but your goal was you wanted to get this done for real. You wanted to ultimately have your eyesight removed completely.
That's right.
Mama, I know I'm a demon. It ain't nothing she could do but pray for me.
The Panectomy subreddit is not a support group though, or a place for medical information. It's a community dedicated to panectomy fetishes. It's existed since August 2014 and has gained over 7,000 members during that time. If you were to ignore my earlier warning and visit it, you'll be met with many dick pics, often accompanied by captions that ask people to describe how they would remove it. Some of the images are panectomy-themed artwork or obvious photoshops that make it look like someone has had panectomy. There are also a few photos of what appears to be medical panectomies. They are of course sexualized. There are plenty of role-playing invitations too, like this post by a user who is looking for someone to play a female who castrates him.
So, some of these men who are fantasizing about castration could be suffering from, an extension of body integrity identity disorder. And for these physicians to quickly capitalize on the distress of an individual who might be psychotic, and psychosis can, extend over a period of time, to make permanent lasting decisions, in an instant. So what would motivate somebody to undergo a nullification surgery? Well, let's ask the evil Dr. Gallagher.
So the answer is very similar to what I see in my patients. The majority of patients have simply no no sexual need for it. So they're not interested in undergoing vaginal intercourse or using it sexually. So why would they put themselves through the additional procedure and the upkeep with dilation?
Why, yes, that sounds totally normal and mentally healthy and not totally insane. I don't know, who would question that?
And the worst part about it is you have these plastic surgeons who deal in gender, who talk about how gender is fluid and it can change day to day, and some people start off as one thing and then they become another thing. And
Nobody likes me, everybody hates me. They want me to go eat some worms. Drag my name through the mud, through the dirt, but I'ma make you eat your worms.
I can do both. I can be your boy toy, I can be your bride. I can shut my mouth or I can open wide. Do you want the masculine or feminine side? I can do both. I can do both.
we see this described in TikTok videos, are then talking about how they feel fully confident that what they're doing to permanently alter the body and basically destroy the function of healthy body parts as totally ethical.
So when they looked at satisfaction rates, like what I see amongst my patients, regret seems to be extremely rare after this. And in short-term follow-up, they found that satisfaction rates were very high, and 93% of patients were very satisfied with their procedure.
They always talk about, oh, people were so happy, oh, they were so grateful afterwards. Of course, after any surgery, when the patient still understands that they're still in a healing period, that no, this is not your final result, it's okay, relax, yes, it hurts, yes, there's some complications, but that's normal, it'll get better, while the patient is still kind of in this pink cloud high, post-operative high. They know things aren't perfect, but they still believe things are about to get better and be exactly what they want. And preliminarily, they're happy with how things went. And it really just the fact that it's just different from what they were. They were trying to escape what they are. They look down. Now there's something different, and that feels good. So, of course, these patients come back in a week or two, and they report all these feelings of euphoria that they're understandably experiencing, of course. And they wanted to escape themselves. Well, now there's something different. They haven't really fully actualized or experienced the real ramifications of what these new changes are going to mean for them. So of course they come back and they're excited and they're happy and they're just so kind of like, wow, overwhelmed with, whoa, my God, this is crazy. And also it's the fear that, wow, I just did something really drastic and I'm never going to be able to go back. I better love this. And so they, are so quick to be like, yes, I love it. Another thing is, too, they've ramped this up for so long. In their mind, they've hyped it up. They've hyped it up to everybody around them. They've convinced everybody that this was a life or death thing, that this was medically necessary, that this is a life-saving procedure. So then when it happens, of course, they want to be like, yes, it was great. It was everything I expected. Nobody wants to say, no, I just made the worst mistake of my life and I'm terrified.
I thought I'd finally feel at home in my new skin, but I felt uncomfortable and awkward because I still felt wrong in myself. Ellie and her friends were joking around and having a good time, whilst all I could think was, I've made a mistake. Rather than the elation and freedom that I'd felt when I was younger, I was uneasy all the time. I didn't understand. This was everything I'd ever wanted. People kept asking me what was wrong, but I couldn't tell them. I was ashamed of myself. What was wrong with me? All the time and effort and heartbreak that both me and my family had been through,
and
I
now
felt ungrateful.
I'm scared about
I became
what I'm
more
going to
and
become.
more withdrawn.
No, because they don't, again, they still think that, no, it's about to get better. I'm still healing. It's okay. It's about to have like a real vagina. Of course it doesn't look like a real vagina now. That's just because it's still healing. It's bruised. And they don't realize that once it heals, that's when it sets in. They're like, oh no, this is what it is. This is it forever. You know, when they don't feel an orgasm, of course, they're not masturbating yet. They're not trying to have sex yet. They're still healing. And so he goes on to say, I'm pretty sure, yeah, I think he still can, experience pleasure. He doesn't say have orgasm. I still think he can experience sexual pleasure.
So the vagina is built out of full thickness skin graft. I believe the patient had sexual sensation because the prostate is never removed in any of these surgeries.
I guess because he uses some logic because of the prostate.
And the prostate, some regard as the male G-spot, and when palpated, can give sexual satisfaction.
And look at all the qualifiers too, and the language is what really you need to pay attention to. Some people say it can be, it is sometimes, I think so, maybe. It's all these very non-committal terms. And rather than sit up here and say, you know what? I didn't follow up with my patient that far out. I don't know. I have no idea. It's possible. I think it's possible. But there's no way to really know because I'm doing experimental surgeries that have never been done before. So really, I don't know. Possibly no. He rather than saying that, he's using all this manipulative language, and people listening to it are being like, "Oh, great!" All that they hear, and a lot of these people don't have the education level that this guy has, and they're looking. There's confirmation bias. You have people who are cherry picking information, whatever they can to confirm what they want to believe, their own bias. So rather, he could say, it might not, but I'm pretty sure it does. Their mind deletes the it might not. And it only captures the I'm pretty sure it does. And in fact, it'll probably delete the pretty sure. They'll just capture the it does. It does work. Okay, great. That's all they want to hear. That confirms. And it's just like he's selling with half information, and then they're buying with half information, and then they're saying what they want, and then it's this whole diffusion of responsibility. It's no one's fault when this stuff goes wrong, right? It's the patient's fault. It's not his though, not the board certified medical doctor who's had years and years and years of training and schooling. Not his fault. Couldn't hold him to his Hippocratic oath. This is dangerous and scary and nullifying people rather than looking at the cause of what's going on and the level of just disregard, blatant disregard for the psychological distress that these people are going through and validating what we know is very disordered thinking.
What does non-binary surgical options does Crane Center offer? We offer everything you can think of.
And not only that, but now they're pushing and advocating for this to be covered by tax dollars, by Medicaid. It's not okay, and there's clearly a financial incentive to these surgeries. So while it is predominantly males exhibiting a desire for self-castration or nullification, there are examples of females who do it too.
A nullification is just like when you have no sexual organs, or at least that you can see.
This is just not normal. And affirming any and everything somebody requests in a state of distress is medical abuse.
Right now I'm wearing a binder just to give off more of the alien genderless look. I'd like to wear it more on my off days, but it does get quite damaging for your ribs. One day, hopefully I'll have surgery just to be completely nothing.
And I would posit that any female who is engaging in a vaginectomy is in one way or another seeking to nullify herself, whether or not she gets a phalloplasty. Again, it's really about protecting the self, closing oneself off, closing off the source of pain. And in one example that was posted, a comment that was posted in Reddit, it says, "It is so liberating not having genitals." The poster says, "I'm a 19-year-old agender person, and I'm recovering from bottom surgery that completely removed my genitals, leaving just smooth skin. 19 years old. So this is barely an adult. This is virtually, oh God, this is like a child. It feels so good to not have genitals, to finally be in the body I was always meant to have, to no longer cry because of my body when I'm in the shower, to touch myself down there and feel nothing at all, feeling so strange yet so right, to just exist and move around in a smooth, genderless body, finally being able to just live as who I am without the feeling a wound between my legs." And listen to the language, a wound. Her vagina felt like a wound. The jolt of joy I get when I remember I am truly genitalless, that my body is no longer feminine. Or the joy I get knowing that I will never be penetrated again, that I cannot be assaulted again. And the joy I feel finally being able to be nude with my girlfriend when I give her pleasure. For anyone with bottom dysphoria, I know that there is light. I know that there is light at the end of your darkest nights. Obviously, this is a homosexual woman. This is a lesbian, and maybe bisexual, but it's worrisome to me because there's this trend now of transing previously gender non-conforming men and women. And there was a question asked to a group of women who considered themselves butch lesbians or butch dykes. And it was, why does it seem that there are less butch lesbians now than there were in the past? Up into the 90s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And
just because there were ostensibly more butches in the 50s, more butches in the 60s, more butches in the 80s, does not mean that there were actually more butches. It means that there were no other ways for them to identify.
You know, the answer is because they're transing them. And the reason why I bring up the butch lesbian issue is the fact of the existence of stoned butch lesbians. Stoned butch lesbians for probably a lot of complex reasons typically prefer to only give pleasure and not receive it. And they don't like to be touched. They typically don't let their girlfriends go down on them. And I'm sure that there are, like I said, a lot of complex reasons why. So if we are transing gender non-conforming butch lesbians on the basis that they are lesbian, which is homophobic, on the basis that they are women who don't conform to stereotypes of femininity, which is misogynistic.
I'm not taking my eyes off you. 3 days later.
Hey, SpongeBob.
Hi, Patrick.
Then what's going to happen? What are the messages that we're going to be sending? We're going to lose all of our butches and to these identities that don't exist. And I worry, what if some of these women are going to start choosing Nullo before they have the opportunity to really experience pleasure, before they have the opportunity to fully grow into themselves and come into themselves? How many victims of sex abuse and sexual assault and childhood sexual assault are going to choose nullification surgeries to remove their genitals and eliminate and extinguish any opportunity to ever have a sexual connection or a pleasure connection with somebody, to ever experience an orgasm, to ever really heal in their body, to reclaim their sexuality? Sex is such a beautiful part of being a human being. It is a precious way to connect with somebody that you love. in this physical, spiritual plane. It's so much more than just a cheap, quick fix. It can be so spiritual. It can be so precious, and it is so complex. And it is, as human beings, we are complicated, and it's so sad to think of women who have always had their pleasure deprioritized, who have always been taught that, their job is to provide pleasure, not receive it, to never get that chance to heal and to know what it feels like to be mutually satisfied with someone that you love. It's really scary. I really worry about how this is going to affect, in particular, butch lesbians and survivors of sexual abuse and childhood sexual abuse, men and women. The fact is that they are just transing people who are gender nonconforming.
What is it to be transgender?
I think the short answer is that if you don't feel like you conform to mainstream society's concept of the gender constructs, what it means to be typically male or typically female, then that really kind of in and of itself puts you in the transgender category.
It used to be that, sex and gender aren't the same thing, but even in this statement by the girl who's talking about her, removal of her genitals, she literally said, to just exist and move around in a smooth, genderless body. Well, I thought sex and gender weren't the same thing. Why, to be genderless, why did you need to remove your genitals? It's sexless, right? Is it sexless or is it genderless? When you follow, all the logic is so circular. Nothing makes sense in this ideology whatsoever.
Being a trans man or trans woman or non-binary, it has nothing to do with your anatomy. It has nothing to do with what's between your legs. There are plenty of non-binary, gender fluid, genderqueer, trans patients that don't get any surgery. And it doesn't make a man any less of a trans man if he chooses never to have phalloplasty and never get a vaginectomy.
Even the one guy's talking about, moving towards maleness with male anatomy and female anatomy.
For a patient that was born with female anatomy but wants to go some degree towards male anatomy.
But I thought the penises could be feminine. I thought the vaginas could be masculine.
And so if gender exists on a continuum, why then would my surgical treatments be binary? That doesn't make any sense, to recognize gender exists on a continuum, but I'm only going to offer all male options or all female options.
What do you mean male options and female options? Weren't you just talking about a man's vagina? So what are you talking about?
I had a college-age student that was born with male anatomy.
What's male anatomy, Dr. Quack? What the fuck are you talking about? I thought that vaginas are male anatomy and penises are female anatomy. What's male? What is that? What does that mean? What are you talking about? You've contradicted yourself like 1,000,000 times during this video. What's male anatomy, Dr. Quack? You're confusing us.
And she said that she identified as female, always wanted a vagina, but got sexual gratification from her phallus.
There are so many different reasons as to why somebody would want to remove their genitals. And rather than deal with the nuance, rather than deal with the sort of context and the history and the psychological status and the trauma history and the disconnect, rather than deal with those on an individual level, we're just throwing everybody into one pot, putting them under the same umbrella, and then we're just treating everybody in the same way. And when you have physicians who are saying, I let my patients lead me and teach me and tell me what to do.
Gender does exist on a continuum. That's what the community has taught me.
That's a real problem. It's like everything is flipped on its head. It's like we're telling, again, even with the babies, we're telling children need to educate us about the world rather than the other way around. Patients need to educate doctors about how to proceed other than the other way around. It's a problem.
What does non-binary surgical options does Crane Center offer? We offer everything you can think of.
We'll offer anything that you can pay for. How much money you got? Shit. with enough money, we'll make anything happen. Nothing is too ridiculous. Nothing is off limits. You can pay for it, you're getting it.
I opened this practice 8 years ago. I've seen at this point thousands of patients from the community.
8 years. And he feels comfortable customizing plastic surgery on the genitals and the urogenital anatomy of mentally ill children and adults. 8 years. That's it.
And I can't think of a time that a patient has come up with a surgical request that I haven't been able to fulfill.
He doesn't even have enough experience in just straightforward gender reassignment, which we already know is not straightforward. He feels comfortable just making up brand new invented surgeries.
I'm one of the only ones in the world that's a plastic surgeon, did a fellowship in transgender surgery, a urologist, and did a fellowship in reconstructive urology. So with having the armamentarium of both a plastic surgeon and a reconstructive urologist, I really can come up with sort of any reasonable surgery that a patient asks for.
He is experimenting on the bodies of mentally ill, gender-confused men and women. How is this acceptable?
So that's another example of how here at the Crane Center we're willing to recognize this is your body, these are your needs, and one of the reasons why I did so much training in 2 different surgical subspecialties was so that I could create safe surgeries for patients that don't have standard requests.
Just because you are deeply arrogant and narcissistic. A narcissist with delusions of grandeur who deems himself invaluable.
Fistulas can happen. I did a year fellowship in repairing fistulas. They don't scare me. I often tell my fellow patients, hey, look, if you get a stricture or a fistula, which is the most common complication, it's like it's a relatively minor revision.
Of course, that to do what you're doing requires such a grandiose level of arrogance that you have the right to just...
If you view your phalloplasty as a Ferrari, we just built you from scratch. A fistula or a stricture repair, it's another surgery, it's another 2 weeks with a suprapubic tube, but it's like changing a tire out on your Ferrari. It doesn't mean you've totaled the Ferrari.
With no regard for the long-term well-being of the people whose bodies you're experimenting on, just so you can say, oh, look what I was able to do. And I'm sure you begin to sell these to people. Shame on you. This is so that he can claim, oh, look what I invented. And he does it repeatedly throughout this live stream. Loves to underscore, well, I was the first, well, I did it. He wants to be a pioneer. This is what this is about. You know, he wants the glory. That's why he's constantly on social media. That's why he's constantly talking about himself. Constantly loves to hear himself talk. Loves to see his own face. This person is very sick and very dangerous to the public health. You're one of the only ones in the world who is reckless and arrogant enough. Believe it or not, there are plenty of physicians and surgeons who could do what you're doing, but who have the ethical integrity, the moral fiber to never do it, who are fine not being on TikTok, who are fine not, being super famous, who would rather just work quietly in the lives of real people, benefiting them and helping them so that they can have long-term health, success, and well-being. But that's not good enough for you. That's not good enough for you.
I always have this discussion with my patients that want urethral lengthening but don't want a vaginectomy. And I always finish it with, if having the vagina is important to you, we should go for it. Just understand there's a high chance that you'll need another surgery to repair that fistula, And then fortunately, almost every fistula repair I've done has worked. I have about a 95 to 98% success rate with the fistula repair. And then the patient has a vagina, has the urethral lengthening, and they're happy.
So, of course, you're going to draw as much attention to yourself as possible. And we all have to just sit in horror and watch as this happens. And then, you even see in this one example of this genderless alien guy, this guy who says he's asexual, again, very young. And you've got to think these young people who want this genderless body have got to be suffering from. I feel like it's the older guys who are more into the fetish, but when it's these really young, early 20s, late teens kids who want to be genderless, you've got to imagine that there's a history of childhood sexual abuse. You've got to. And it's his sister comes and tries to have a conversation about it.
It's all an adventure.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the first time we had this conversation was probably 3 years ago.
Whoa. Me being celibate is my way to be at peace with myself and my body on this process.
And she knows she's being filmed and she raises some concerns.
I want to support you through that process. I'm concerned with the psychological effects of the surgery that it could have, and messing with your biochemistry and your hormones, because we mess up our biochemistry just a little bit and it can throw us completely off. What happens when you decide that you don't want children today, but you may want children later of your own? Have you thought a little bit about that?
Of course I have. I thought about, wanting kids of my own. Yeah. But ever since I was 16, I wanted to adopt kids outside of the system.
But then it's but then I realized that you're just really happy, so I'll support you, whatever. She knows that that's the only right answer she can give.
And those are my biggest concerns, just his safety. I'm concerned about, him changing his mind about surgery, later in life. But the more and more we talk about it, the more it actually feels like this is actually truly what he needs and wants to be more authentically him.
I'll just support you through whatever you want, even as I watch in despair as you're enabled to self-harm.
Right now we are going to Dr. Simone's because he is absolutely incredible at every procedure. He's one of those very well-rounded doctors. I'm excited because I haven't actually been to a doctor to talk about this, a surgeon, in a very long time, because I was very kind of shied and quieted by previous doctors. So I'm excited to see what he has to say.
And he's complaining that other doctors won't allow it.
When I tell doctors my goals, they typically will giggle, not think I'm serious, rush me out of their office, find another excuse, tell me I need to go see a therapist.
Allow it, of course. Found the one who will.
Nice to meet you. Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. Come with me, please.
Yeah.
So first, let's start with why do you want to have this done?
I've been wanting to have this done because for many reasons. First of all, I don't use my genitals. I'm already into transitioning.
If we're gonna have medical doctors perform surgeries to address psychological concerns, you know what they should focus on? You know what subspecialty that other doctor should have gotten? Psychiatry. There should be an in-house psychiatrist working intimately with these surgeons. If that were, period, no, this shit needs to just be abolished, period. Right? But if adults are going to pursue surgeries, you need to have, there's just no ethical way to justify mutilating the genitals of mentally ill people without addressing the root problem. And that's why dissatisfaction is so common and regret is so common, because the root problem was never addressed and never resolved.
I'm already into transitioning, but I never really wanted to be a woman. I think that's kind of an easy way out.
An easy way out of what? This language is so concerning. It is such red flags, and
I feel that it'd be easier just to have nothing.
Now, if you're creating a new type of a sexual organ which is actually asexual organ. We don't know how your body's gonna react to it. The surgical procedure that Vinny wants to have done, it's very unique. It's not been done before.
Why are we filming this? Why are we putting this on television?
I just want to like go and leave the house and do stuff, but people are very mean. And obviously I'm just trying to go and do my thing. I don't really want all the attention.
People are saying over and over and over again, I decided I wanted this. I realized I was this because I read about it online. I saw it on TV. I didn't know beforehand.
After Jareth transitioned into a man, their breasts were removed, but following the transition, Jareth admitted that things just didn't feel right. Jareth is now 33 and they don't feel comfortable as either gender. But when Jareth heard the term agender, the term that applies to someone who doesn't have a gender, it felt like it fit.
I met a lot of my friends from online. One of them, Salvia.
They get hyper fixated on something. Once they realize something is in existence, they hyper focus on it as the solution to some other internal problem, some deeper problem.
The idea of being an agender alien fit perfectly as an identity. Jareth now identifies as an agender alien and sports the look to back it up. Jareth removed their nipples, has 78 star tattoos, and their eyebrows are also removed, in addition to the breasts being removed when they transitioned into a man.
They do it in such a way that looks like reality TV.
We met at Rouxx. It's a club in London.
When a baddie meets a baddie, there's just no choice but to become bestie-westies. Definitely it's helped with my anxiety a lot. I remember before I started doing this, even taking a picture like in public would be like, oh my god.
And all the cuts, and it's them, you know, walking down the street and he's strutting and he looks good. And
many doctors will have to take into consideration the psychological aspects of it as much as the medical aspects of it. My main problem with his procedure was that what he's going to think about in 10-15 years, because all the bridges are gone. There's no way to come back to female or male, and he's young and now he has to live with it until he's 80 or 90 years old.
This is obviously a homosexual transsexual male. This is a gay man who probably has a history of sexual abuse. There's two sides, just like it seems like this whole transition thing has always had. One is running away from sexuality and sex, and the other is moving towards it in a fetishistic, paraphilic way. So it's either trying to desexualize or hypersexualize yourself. And this whole notion that gender and sex aren't the same. No, the fuck it's not. It all has to do with sex. It's all related to sex. Our sexual organs have to do with sex and reproduction and relationships. It's our sexual expression, our gender expression has to do with who we want to attract or not attract, how we want to present. It's all rooted in our sex, our sexual organs. No, it's not irrelevant. It's very relevant. This is a gay man who is trying to desexualize himself.
I personally love Vinny's look because I always like people that they don't look normal per se, or what society says that it's normal. I support Vinny's transformation, becoming a genderless alien. Like I said, if he's ready to do it, I will go with him, be by his side.
Of course you support it. You're his agent. You're making money off of this. Look at you. You get to be on TV. But regardless of the ideology, who, what, when, where, and how, and the details, all I know is the last thing we need to do is normalize and perpetuate this bizarre, terrifying method of self-harm. This is the last thing we need to do, is normalize this. And this is the slippery slope that we're on.
Hey y'all, if you see this on your For You page, guess who this is? It's that Ninja Turtle, yo. I'm half Barney, half Ninja Turtle. I karate you, you karate me. Hi-ya! Hey, bro, I'm going live. Come see me. Have fun, y'all. We going live.